How are you, senior high school students? Here is the part 1 of your lesson number 8 entitled Nature of Elections in the Philippines. But before we proceed, let me ask you, if you have the chance to hold an office, which do you prefer? To be appointed or to get elected? According to Theodore Roosevelt, a vote is like a rifle. Its usefulness depends upon the character of the user. The title of the first part of the lesson is Nature of Elections in the Philippines. For our objectives, at the end of the lesson, we will be able to describe the nature of elections and political parties in the Philippines, discuss the implications of the existing electoral and political party systems in the country, and propose different advocacies and how to address them through the methods utilized by political parties. What is an election, by the way? According to our references, it is a formal group decision-making process by which a population chooses an individual or multiple individuals to hold public office. Elections have been the usual mechanism by which modern representative democracy has operated since the 17th century. Elections may fill offices in the legislature, sometimes in the executive and judiciary, and for regional and local government. This process is also used in many other private and business organizations, from clubs to voluntary associations and corporations. A device for filling an office through choices made by a designated body of people, the electorate. For the ordinary citizen, elections are seen as the clearest instance of politics entering their lives. And when we say electoral politics is a vital connection between state authority and society, linking the structure of government to other social groupings. Political action seeking power to achieve policy objectives. And how about the functions of elections? What are they? There is the so-called bottom-up people government view. Elections provide the citizenry with a meaningful way of participating in government, a mechanism for leadership selection, an instrument for evaluating and changing governments, and a forum for interest articulation and political socialization. And the other function is the so-called top-down government people view. Election as an instrument of rule legitimization, a guide to political strategy, and as agent for political socialization and integration. Provided in Article 5 in our 1987 Constitution under the title Suffrage. Section 1. Suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines not otherwise disqualified by law, who are at least 18 years of age and who shall have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year and in the place wherein they propose to vote for at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. No literacy, property, or other substantive requirement shall be imposed on the exercise of suffrage. Section 2. The Congress shall provide a system for securing the secrecy and sanctity of the ballot, as well as a system for absentee voting by qualified Filipinos abroad. The Congress shall also design a procedure for the disabled and the illiterates to vote without the assistance of other persons. Until then, they shall be allowed to vote under existing laws and such rules as the Commission on Elections may promulgate to protect the secrecy of the ballot. And on Article 9 under Constitutional Commissions, on letter C, Commission on Elections, that the Commission on Elections shall exercise the following powers and functions: enforce and administer all laws and regulations relative to the conduct of an election, plebiscite, initiative, referendum, and recall. For further knowledge about the elections, we have various of voting activities in the country. We have the national and local elections, wherein citizenry select a person who will exercise governmental power. Plebiscite, popular vote conducted to get electorate's view on permanent changes on a state's political structure. Referendum, popular vote regarding soundness of a law proposed. Recall, constitutional measure which empowers citizenry to remove a local official. And initiative, a given percentage of voters may officially propose a law. And before we go further, more on our lesson, let's try to look back on some of our elections highlights from the past. During pre-colonial, our ancestors did not hold any elections. But during Spanish period, there were a few attempts to nationally elect local officials. And during American period, in the Philippine-American War, the Captaincy General of the Philippines and the First Philippine Republic were replaced by the insular government of the Philippine Islands, which was established by United States. Multiple elections had been held throughout peaceful areas of the country for provincial and local officials. During the First Philippine Republic, an attempt was made to elect a national legislature, but the former did not control the whole Philippine archipelago, so no nationwide election could be held. The first fully national election for a fully elected legislative body was in 1907 for the Philippine Assembly, the elected chamber of the bicameral Philippine legislature during the American colonial period. Starting in 1909, periodic local and Philippine Assembly elections were done concurrently until 1916, until the Jones Law reorganized the Philippine legislature to the Senate and the House of Representatives, both now popularly elected. This setup continued until the Tidings McDuffie authorized the then U.S. territory to draft a constitution. The ensuing 1935 Constitution instituted the Commonwealth of the Philippines, and with it the Presidency, Vice Presidency, and the Unicameral National Assembly. Then elections were done for these offices later that year. The National Assembly amended the Constitution, reconstituting a bicameral Congress in 1941. The first elections under this setup was done later that year. World War II intervened, and the Japanese occupation of the Philippines led to the creation of the Second Philippine Republic, with elections done in 1943 for its own National Assembly. In 1945, the Americans defeated the Japanese. President Jose P. Laurel declared the dissolution of the Second Republic, and the Commonwealth was reestablished. Commonwealth elections, meant for 1945, were done in 1946, and independence was granted on July 4, 1946. Incumbent President Elpidio Quirino won a full term as President of the Philippines after the death of President Manuel Rojas in 1948. His running mate, Senator Fernando Lopez, won as Vice President. Despite factions created in the administration party, Quirino won a satisfactory vote from the public. It was the only time in Philippine history where the duly elected president, vice president, and senators all came from the same party, the Liberal Party. Carlos P. Romulo and Marvin M. Gray, publisher of the Manila Evening News, accused Quirino in their book The Magsaysay Story of widespread fraud and intimidation of the opposition by military action, calling it the dirty election. On September 23, 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law. The Constitutional Convention, which had earlier been elected in 1970, submitted its draft constitution. A plebiscite approved this constitution in 1973. A series of referendums consolidated Marcos' rule, and the first local elections were done in 1975. The first parliamentary election to the unicameral Batasang Pambansa, the national parliament, was done in 1978. The first presidential election under the 1973 Constitution was done in 1981. A special snap presidential elections was held in 1986, with Marcos being declared as the winner. There were allegations of massive fraud, and the People Power Revolution drove Marcos from power. Corazon Aquino succeeded Marcos as president. A new constitution was approved in a plebiscite in 1987. Legislative elections were done later that year, then for every 3 years thereafter in 1992. Unlike in the 1941 amendments to the 1935 Constitution, 12 senators, all members of the House of Representatives, and local officials are to be elected every 3 years. 24 senators were elected in 1987 and 1992, and 12 were subsequently elected starting in 1995. The President and Vice President now have 6-year terms and were first elected in 1992. Party list representatives were first elected in 1998, and this is the current setup. And now, you may wonder the term absentee voting on election day. Absentee voters are divided into two types: the local absentee voters and the overseas absentee voters. Local absentee voters include people who are working during election day. This includes soldiers, policemen, government employees, and the like. Overseas absentee voters are Filipinos residing abroad. They are eligible to vote for national positions only: president, vice president, senators, and party list representatives. Overseas absentee voters may vote in Philippine embassies and consulates, and voting begins as early as 4 months prior to the election. The voting can be as long as 6 months in very few situations. And on one of our country's election process is when once a registered voter finds their name in the voters list and locates the correct precinct, they may queue in line for the distribution of the ballot. The development of the election was first done in 2008 autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao general election. The voters have to shade the oval that was indicated before the candidate's name, and a voting machine manufactured by Smartmatic automatically counts each ballot as it is fed into it. The results are then printed as the election return and sent electronically to the city or municipal board of canvassers. Alright, as we had already discussed its concepts and its past, let us now try to compare the recent and upcoming election years. National and local elections are held on the second Monday of May every third year starting 1992. The presidential and vice presidential elections are held every 6 years. Election days in which the president and vice president and barangay officials are not elected are called midterm elections. Election days in which the president and vice president are elected are called presidential elections. Barangay level officials, although are no longer elected in the same year as the other officials since 2022, are elected separately the succeeding months. From 1949 to 1971, election days are held every second Tuesday of November of every odd-numbered year, with the presidential and vice presidential elections held the every fourth year starting from 1951. Barangay level elections starting from 2007 are usually held every 3 years during the last Monday of October. Although these elections are frequently postponed and incumbents' terms are extended as a cost-saving measure. Elections for the positions in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or BARM, starting from 2011, are held every 3 years during the second Monday of May. One of the most, although small, selection percentage necessary to have a seat and a representation, our party list voting system provides opportunity for underrepresented sectors and parties in Philippine society to have a legitimate chance of winning representation in Congress. And to conclude our electoral exercises, in a presidential election year, a voter may vote for as much as 34 names and the party list organization. In Bangsamoro elections, a voter may vote for a member of the Bangsamoro Parliament from one's district and the party list. In barangay elections, a voter may vote for 8 names. A voter for the Sangguniang Kabataan, the SK Youth Council, may vote for 8 names. An SK voter may also vote for barangay officials. See you in our discussions of the other part of this lesson, the nature of political parties in the Philippines. See you then. Stay safe, everyone.